everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host kushalmehra. All right, today's podcast is on the book Bravehearts of Bharat, and to talk about it, I have my friend and author of the book, Vikram Sampath. Vikram, welcome.
Thank you, Kushal. Always such a pleasure speaking with you.
So you putting everyone to shame. एक के बाद एक book लिखते जा रहा है यार. मतलब क्या हो रहा है ये?
Time is short, lots to do. So, man in a hurry.
Okay, so let's start like this. See, your last major book was on Savarkar, Volume 1 and 2. That was um, on one character, a detailed deep dive on the life of one specific character. Now, in your next book, you have done the complete opposite version of that. You have picked up short excerpts and you have summarized stories of different heroes. So, first of all, how was the shift? So let's start with this. ये क्यों डिसीजन किया? You could have gone with one character at a time. तो ये sudden change क्यों किया पहले तो ये?
No, I think a biography I always say is like a love affair. बहुत ज़्यादा, you have to get uh, completely involved in one character, and it takes 4 5 years of effort. And I think if a biographer is true to his or her trade and craft, then it takes away a lot of yourself. I often say that a part of the biographer dies with every biography, because you've gone through an entire life, the highs, the lows, everything that your protagonist goes through. So I just wanted to, one is do something on a slightly more lighter basis. I thought it's going to be a lighter work compared to going deep dive into one particular person. But later on, I realized that this was probably more complicated than that, because one is it had so many people, it had so many different parts of India, from Kashmir to the northeast to South India, Western India, everything outside the periphery of Delhi, which is normally where the history of India focuses on largely. And such scanty records, though these were such wonderful people, there was so little that was available, normally for many of them. And so having to fall back on regional literature and oral narratives, folklores, a lot of interviews. So it was a different kind of experience rather than going through. So I think in the course of this book, I think I did a quick Bharat Darshan of meeting different people and cultures, traditions, and their histories, their local customs, and all that. So it was a hugely learning experience for me. Some people who read the book told me that we feel a little ashamed to say we knew Indian history, because many people in the book are names that we'd never even heard of. So I think that was the whole idea behind this. Of course, I like I write even in my prologue, I'll be pilloried for why did you not pick this one, or why did you pick X or leave out Y. So those Y's will always be there. But I think, I hope a book like this would spur more scholars, more writers and historians to work on similar themes of bringing to light unsung heroes and heroines from different parts of India. And I think the need of the hour is that.
You know what I found fascinating, and I'm not a writer. You're a prolific writer, but I'm just a reader. So when I was reading, the first thing that struck to me is like in Savarkar, right? You could have taken the liberty of getting a lot of things in because you had 600 odd pages to play with in one volume each, right? So, but here you are like stuck with a 25 to 30 um, page limit, right? Per personality in the book. So how do you decide what to add and what not to? That must be so tough.
Yes, true. And sometimes the content was quite a lot. Sometimes it was extremely sparse. And for me, Kushal, always, even in a biography, it's always to, paint the theme around the times also, in which the character lived. Most biographies come with the subtitle of Life and Times of So and so. People talk only about the life. It's a linear chronological narrative from birth to death. But what were the times in which this character lived, how did that influence their life and decisions, and how did they influence the the times. All of this is seldom covered. So in this case, the idea was also to build that context, around which were these dynasties, because many of them, like Karkotas of Kashmir, nobody would have even heard of these. Such a dynasty existed. The Meiteis of Manipur and what that actually meant, and so on. So this kind of painting the picture, the background, so to say, to the entire thing, that was also very important. So I had to it was a tough task to see what part of it to leave out and how much to take and so on. And it was a balancing act to also ensure that one person is not given disproportionate importance over any other character.
Hmm. So there are 15 personalities that you have identified in this book, which you dedicate an individual chapter to. Now, what ties them together is my first question to you. So there are 15 diverse personalities, different genders, different religions, by the way. It's not like they're all from one religion too. There are different religions too, different time spaces, because it's not like a time gap of 300 years and you've cramped people from 300 years. The time span is also like 1,000, 1,500 years ka gap in between the personalities also, because I was trying, what I was doing is, once you wrote I read your book now, so I was trying to map them कि हाँ ये टाइम फ्रेम पे है, ये टाइम फ्रेम पे है, ये जेंडर है, ये रिलीजन है. And I was looking at the diversity spread. I was like, how did he manage to do this, first of all, and what ties them together? So what do you think ties them?
Wow, that's a great question, because they're all of them. It would have been very easy to pick. Say, if I pick Lalitaditya, then also around the same time you had Raja Dahar, almost a contemporary of his, from Sindh. You also had people like Nagabhatta, Pulakeshin, all of them who were around the same time. Bappa Rawal, all of these people. It would have been very easy to have one chapter after the other about all of contemporaries. My idea was to ensure to show this thread of resistance, of courage, a never say die attitude which existed for that entire time span from the 7th century till the 19th century, when I ended with 1857. That in the face of lots of adversities, in the face of attacks, in the face of invasions, how did India and Indians actually stand up and resist all these attempts? How did we ensure that our civilization, our faiths, our freedom was fiercely protected? And who were the people who were leading this charge? So at in a particular time span, there could have been 3 4. So instead of taking all of them from that one cluster of 100 200 years, yeah, it was good to just pick one as the main person, and also mention the others. Like, in the Lalitaditya chapter, I do talk extensively about the invasion of Sindh. I talk about the resistance that Raja Dahar puts, and how it was so difficult to conquer Sindh for several decades for the Arabs, and till it ultimately fell to Muhammad bin Qasim. So picking these things was a very subjective decision, but for me that was the common thread of courage, of valor, from Lalitaditya to a Lachit Borphukan, who, the classic underdog. I think an MBA school, should do a case study on some of these characters. Like, everything down and out, your chips are down and out. How did the kingdom of the Ahoms actually rebuild themselves from scratch? Strategize in a very calm, cool, calculated way, lie low for a couple of years, regroup yourself, the manner in which that spirit of fight back was organized, and then you go for the ultimate kill. And what a resounding victory that was with the Battle of Saraighat in 1671. But at the same time, two characters which whom I found, people may question why they were included. One was Ahilya Bai Holkar, and the other was Bhagyachandra, Rajashri Bhagyachandra Jayasingha of Manipur. They were not the conventional warriors who went on wars and so on, but I think their role in this book, in this series, becomes important as civilizational heroes who fought, who strove, I shouldn't say fought, who strove for maintaining the civilizational ethos of India. Ahilya Bai, through her magnificent work of uniting this whole nation through religion, through spirituality, and how in distant Manipur, from the time Pameba introduced Hinduism to the time the Madhur Bhakti or the Krishna Bhakti came up as an important form of worship in Manipur. You have the Manipuri Ras Leela also, which was started by Bhagya Chandra Jai Singh. So these two characters were that. So the common thread was this, that they were go-getters. They had this never say die attitude, and they strove for our civilizational victory, whether it be in battlefield or in keeping our civilizational ethos alive itself.
Yeah, Ahilya Bai ka, I have to just to bolster your point, because you share the story in the book. So in the book you say all of Khanderao's wives, nearly 10 more, rushed to commit sati. But Malhar Rao prevented Ahilya Bai from this self-immolation, as her presence was indispensable in the administration. So
Yeah.
key emphasis on her presence was indispensable in the administration. Maybe we can talk about that. What was so special about her?
So Malhar Rao Holkar was one of the. I mean, he himself had risen from the ranks of the shepherd or the Dhangar caste that he belonged to, and then with the his proximity to the Peshwa, soon he was among the main chieftains among whom all the saranjam, the lands that were distributed for the maintenance of armies and for territorial protection, the Sindhyas, the Holkars, the Gaikwads. He became one of them, and the whole of what is today Madhya Pradesh, Malwa, Indore, that region came to him. And it was only by accident when he was going through a village someday and spent a night there at somebody's house. He saw this little girl who was so shrewd in the way she was dealing with a particular situation that he was extremely impressed by her, and he sought her hand. She was barely, I think, 9 or 10 years old then, and he sought her hand for his son Khanderao. And what is interesting, Kushal, is that as a father-in-law, he realized that this girl was so precocious and that she was talented. And so, though he got her married, he ensured that after she was in his household, she got the best of education. She was trained in all aspects of administration, finance, keeping stock of accounts, even military strategy. All of that was something that he ensured for his daughter-in-law. And even while he had become the apple of the eye of the Peshwa and kept rising in the ranks, especially with Nana Sahib Peshwa. But of course, later fell on the wrong side during the third battle of Panipat, when he kind of came back, and people say he betrayed Sadashivrao Bhau. But in the thick of all this action that he was in, he was all the time sharing those political correspondences, political updates about what was happening in the country with his daughter-in-law. His son was given to pleasures. He had so many wives. He was half the time intoxicated and all that. But this man, Malhar Rao Holkar, actually trusted his daughter-in-law much more than his son. And so when the son died in one of those battles, he and when all the other wives committed sati, he prevailed upon her that you're the only one to help me at this juncture, because the grandson was a infant. Until he comes of age, if you also go away, I won't have anybody to support me. And so he prevailed upon Ahilya Bai not to commit sati, and so that's why she lived on, and thank God for that, because if not, I mean, the Indore state might have just collapsed, particularly after Malhar Rao died, in 1766 or so. So after that, it was completely Ahilya Bai's, domain. She, of course, the Peshwa's uncle Raghoba tried to usurp this place because it was led by a woman. But the manner in which she ensured that Raghoba was driven away, and in fact had to eat humble pie, come back and literally sit for a meal with her, that also showed that she was she was a very very strategic woman. Everything need not always be won on battlefield. A lot of the game can be on a chessboard sitting in a room, which is what she did to ensure that Raghava came around to her viewpoint. So a very very fascinating character. And later when her son dies very early,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, and she kind of says, I don't want to adopt anyone, I will now rule. And so that again becomes a huge issue in the Maratha empire till of course the Peshwa prevails and allows her to continue with Tukoji as somebody who would help her. But a very very sad personal life. Her daughter commits sati, though she did not commit sati, but she could not prevent her daughter from committing sati when her son-in-law dies, and that kind of shattered her. And she led a very very sad life towards the end in 1796 or 97. So around that time she was quite a lonely and sad woman, but a beautiful trajectory of a life, so well led. The manner of the good governance that she brought to the Indore state, the as I said, the renovation of so many reconstruction and renovation of so many temples across India, all the seven, puris, the 12 Jyotirlingas, the four dhams, from Kashmir to Rameshwaram to Dwarka to Puri. She kind of united the whole country through this spiritual renaissance that she did. So, despite that, personal life was quite a disaster, which was a sad, part of Ahilya Bai. But Kushal, what amazed me was Ahilya Bai is there everywhere. I mean, you go to Indore, the airport is Ahilya Bai airport. Everywhere in Indore, those watching your show who are from Indore would certainly know that everywhere the idol of Ahilya Bai is there. As a very very motherly figure holding the shivling in her hand, like
Hmm.
this. But then if one actually goes even to the palace archives, I even went to the family, the Holkar family, the archives that are there at Maheshwar, which was her capital, where they have a huge vada now, which is converted into a heritage hotel and all that. So little documentation about Ahilya Bai and what she did. All that they can talk is, thanks to her, the Maheshwari sarees are now very famous. She got all the weavers stationed there. She built these temples. But a little more detail about her life, about who she was. She was so prolific. She was educated. So didn't she keep any accounts? Didn't she write her own diaries in times of distress? Unfortunately, didn't find any of those, which is so sad uh, for someone like her. So many of these stories are very superficially known. Everybody maybe has heard the name Ahilya Bai. If you get in and out of Indore, you can't miss her. You go to Gaya, you find her statue. When the Kashi corridor, Vishwanath corridor was inaugurated recently, everyone kept speaking about how it was Ahilya Bai who renovated the mandir, which was destroyed by Aurangzeb. But who was this lady? Can we have more details about her life? Where did she come from? How was the trajectory of her life? Sadly, nothing is known much about that. And whatever I could, literally gather pieces from here and there, I tried to put those together to kind of give a semblance of her life's journey.
Man, what a brave woman, considering the time she was in, the kind of pressure she was in, and her societal reality. I mean, when I was reading this chapter, I was like, how tough was it on this woman? And she took it and she made the most of it. I mean, she's just fantastic. But there's an interesting excerpt. You state this in the first chapter itself. You talk about the Arab cartographer Muhammad al Idrisi, and he says the Indians are naturally inclined to justice and never depart from it in their actions. Their good faith, honesty, and fidelity to their engagements are well known, and they are so famous for these qualities that people flock to their country from every side, and hence the country is flourishing and their condition prosperous. Now, this is obviously in the paragraph where you talk about the invasion of Sindh. Now, how much of the classic debate? I'll tell you why this happens. The classic debate, Vikram, has always been that uh, how much of it with these invasions was religious zealotry, how much of it was the financial state of India. One side of the historical paradigm will say It's just they were just in it for the money. It is just politics. And one side of the paradigm will say, oh, it was all religious zealotry. Why can't it be both? I've always wondered.
Yeah. It was certainly both, Kushal. Though the drive to go, across the world on jihad was certainly driven by religion, and within what, less than a century, maybe 60, 70 years of the death of Prophet Muhammad, the caliphs who came after him, they went on a vast global expansion. Why would they have to do that? And the Byzantine Empire, the Sassanid Empire, all these parts of Syria, Egypt, Persia, Iraq, all these regions, North Africa, all of them were Islamized in less than a century of the Prophet's death. And then, the empire in no time, the whole of Central Asia, North Africa, going up to the Atlantic on one side, and touching literally the gates of India on the east. This was the entire span of this new force that had begun, and it had religio-political motivations, and of course finances to get new lands and riches was certainly there. But just that was not the driving force. That was certainly a part of it, but mainly this the religious zeal to crush infidels and to establish the true faith, which was the guiding light of their leader and the book that they revered. That became the driving force for them to set out into the world. And that's where I think the story of India is so interesting, Kushal, that while in such a short span, in a couple of decades, such vast empires of Central Asia and the Sassanid Empire and all of these people were conquered, it took the Islamic conquest 500 years to actually establish the first Islamic Sultanate in India. So the Arabs came, and then the Turks came. There's so many rounds of invasions. The Arabs beyond Sindh, they just could not conquer any significant part of India at that time. And even Sindh, it took them almost something like 80, 90 years, from 633 or so. They kept trying in vain several attacks on the Sindh borders, but they were repelled by the Raja Dahar's family, a Brahmin family of Sindh, Raja Chacha, and then Raja Dahar, who are mentioned in the Chachnama. And then finally, it was only in 710 that when Muhammad bin Qasim came, the Sindh fell. But after that, they could have easily gone. They tried. I mean, they tried to go up till Kashmir. They went into central India. They went into Ujjain, Kannauj, Magad, the Bihar, and also Madhya Pradesh, all over. But everywhere they were defeated, and their locus of importance was shrunk only to some small little ports here and there in Sindh, and that also they were eventually thrown out. And then about 175 or 200 years later, you had the wave of Turkic invasions, starting first with Muhammad of Ghazni, and then of course Ghori another 100 years later. And that also, I mean, when someone says that someone like a Muhammad Ghazni came only for financial considerations, it's a little uh, being economical with the truth. And I think that's where several of our eminent historians have made this argument that, even in Somnath, it was only the riches that actually brought Muhammad Ghazni there. And there again, the narrative is, you have the corrupt Brahmin priests who amass so much wealth, and they put it up there in the temple. And so the temples became natural objects, the magnets for destruction. But then what do the original sources say? Contemporary sources of Muhammad Ghazni itself, whether it is Al-Baruni later, or Farishta, and all these other, chroniclers, the Islamic chroniclers itself, time and again, particularly of Muhammad of Ghazni, they say he comes to India. He's heard about Somnath. He's been told that there is this deity there which is protecting people, and in the life here and the afterlife, and he thinks this is a completely pagan thing, it's an infidel work, and it has to be destroyed as per the dictats of his faith. And so he makes that trip. Of course, the Chalukya ruler who's there in Gujarat that time, Bhim Deva, he runs away, and so Muhammad Ghazni has an easy pass to Somnath. But what is interesting is when he goes there in 1025, almost 50,000, he's quite astonished to see 50,000 common Hindus. Nobody from the royal family, nobody from the army of the Chalukyas, because the king himself has run away. These were common Hindus who had stood up there for the defense of their temple and their deity. And it took him almost a week to kind of kill all of them and make his way inside the temple. And the contemporary chroniclers then say, as he's going into the Garbhagriha, the priests then come running to him saying, if you want only money, we will give you everything that is there in the temple. Whatever money we have, we'll get more money and we'll give it to you. Take it and just leave our place. We want to protect our God. So Mahmud is supposed to have laughed and said, if I do that, I will be called a trader of idols. I do not want to be called that. I would like to be remembered, my legacy to be remembered as a Butchikan or a breaker of idols. And so he says he disregards this offer of the priest to give him money, instead goes there and, of course, breaks up the idol. It is then pounded into small pieces and powders, and then taken all the way to Ghazni and parts of it to Mecca and so on, to be put on the steps of the masjid, so that every time a faithful steps on it, the religion of the infidel is symbolically brought down. So when the contemporary records are talking this, that the person, his driving force was not riches. If it was riches, if the priests are offering him that money, he would have taken that and gone away. But he makes it very clear that I want to be called as Butchikan. And all these chroniclers take so much pride that their Sultan actually came and destroyed the idol in Mathura, the idol in Somnath, and all of that. So, despite primary sources talking to us in this way, we have today's contemporary historians trying to whitewash that and say, oh, but it was only economic considerations. There was no religious feeling there, which I think is completely, being economical with the truth for ulterior motives.
Yeah, another thing that I think we should just mention as a passing reference is the spread of Lalitaditya's empire. That man covered a lot. I mean, in your chapter, you say, oh, Tamil Nadu, he went all the way down to
Sri
Tamil
Lanka,
Nadu also.
even Sri Lanka.
Yeah,
No,
I
but
mean,
no,
I,
that I think is a little. I myself and Mark Stein, who translated the Rajatarangini for the first time, also marks this out, and I've also put that disclaimer that it
I
seems
know.
like Kalhana, who wrote the Rajatarangini, was being a little fanciful, because we don't have any inscriptions or proof to show that the Rashtrakuta, dynasty, which was largely in the Karnataka region of today, was occupied by Kashmir, or there's some influence of Kashmiri seals or something else. Some inscription would have been there, or in the Tamil land, or even in Sri Lanka. So there is really no. There are some areas like Gujarat and Punjab and so on, where there are coins or there are inscriptions which talk about the spread of Lalitaditya. So to that extent too, if you look at what we have today as the geographical boundaries of Kashmir, you still had an empire which went from Kashmir all the way up to Gujarat, and also Madhya Pradesh, going up to Bengal. That was the span of Lalitaditya's kingdom, because he had conquered Yashovarman from Kannauj, and that was the whole of Middle India, and the Doab region, the Indo-Gangetic plains, and also the Bihar and Bengal. The Gaud king of Bengal was also vanquished, and on the western frontiers, he had gone up to Kabul and Zabulistan, and made them as his feudatories. So a very very vast empire for Kashmir, which does show that under the Karkotas, the dynasty of which Lalitaditya was a part, it was a massive empire. Kalhana's description of it going all the way to Sri Lanka may have been an exaggeration, but Nonetheless, this was much more than how we think of Kashmir today as just that one state, but it was a vaster empire. And this we're talking of in the 7th, 8th, 9th centuries, roughly, when the Karkotas were at their peak of their power.
Okay, now I want to spend some time on and don't blame me, blame Kamal Hassan for it. I mean,
Oh God,
so
I know where you're heading.
yeah, so we have to. I mean, because I see you did not know Kamal Hassan was going to make this statement when you were writing your book, but it is what it is. So your book does talk about the Cholas. Now, were the Cholas Hindu?
Well, I think we should have just laughed it off and not given the man so much of publicity, because it didn't deserve that kind of a thing. Now, look, I mean, it's I just don't know what to say, because because here was a dynasty which built some of the most massive structures. Today we have a gigantic, 1,000+ year old Brihadishwara temple in Tanjavur, which is in all its glory the one of the longest gopurams that we've had, tallest gopurams, exquisite architecture dedicated to Brihadishwara, who's Shiva. And you say Shaivites or Shiva Bhaktas are not Hindus. That's a separate group by itself. I mean, these are the Shaiva Pantha, the Vaishnava, Shaura, or the followers of Surya, then the Shakta, of the Devi. Then you had the Kaumara of Kartikeya, and Ganapatya, or of Ganpati. All these are different streams of the larger, ocean called Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism, or whatever else one could call it. There are multiple names. So while traditionally, or uh, you know, basically these people may have been Shiva Bhaktas, they actually traced their dynasty also to Tiruman, who was Lord Vishnu. And later on they changed it. And because, mind you, the Cholas actually are one of the longest reigning royals, houses of India. Their documented history itself is more than 1,000 years, 1,500 years, with several breaks in the lineage. There are several waves of the Cholas. So they trace their Adi Purush to Vishnu and then to Surya, and then they say we are Surya Vamshis at some point. So all the Puranic kings that we have, from Harishchandra to Bhagiratha, and all these people they claim as part of their lineage. Then they say, Dasharatha was also part of their lineage. Then obviously Bhagwan Ram was also part of their lineage. So Vishnu and Surya, the other streams of Sanatan Dharma, were also very much part of their belief system, even though they were Shaivites by nature. So they didn't say we came from Mount Kailas, or we belong to Shiva's lineage. They took these other groups. And interestingly, their family deity was this goddess called Nishumb Sudhini, who is a form of Durga. So there was a Shakta tradition also, which was a part of their beliefs. Then all their architecture, their motifs, their paintings, you have a lot of this thing to references to Ganpati. Then Murugan was commemorated. A lot of Murugan temples, Kartikeya, as Murugan in South India, was also commemorated. And interestingly, Kushal, the Cholas have left behind tons and tons of documentation. Sometimes the same information has been left behind through multiple sources, whether it was palm leaves, whether it was temple inscriptions, whether it was coins, and so on. And also other kind of documents that we have, copper plates, the Tiruvalangadu copper plates, which were there. And the amount of documentation is staggering, because on the Brihadishwara temple in Tanjavur itself, on the temple walls, we have inscriptions about some 400 Devdasis who were part of the temple rituals, who danced there, their names, their emoluments, their addresses, all of that actually inscribed there. So they've left behind so much of this. They kept their records, their inscriptions and their sources in both Tamil as well as Sanskrit. And Rajaraja and Rajendra themselves, they gave a lot of grants to people who spoke both these languages. And so this fight that we now create of Tamil versus Sanskrit, obviously these people did not see it that way. And so, and also the Vedic traditions that were followed, whether it was performing big yajnas or sacrificial fire offerings, and also these elaborate danas that they gave to different uh, temples, the Shodasha Mahadanas and all these things, they all followed a Vedic kind of a ritual there. The Tulabhara Dana and all of this that they did, all those was part of the Vedic tradition. They revered Sanskrit as much as they also encouraged Tamil, which came up at that time. So, in the wake of all of this, if you say that that is not Hindu, then I don't know, because yeah, today someone could just go and if you ask Jesus Christ, "Are you a Christian?" I'm sure he will not understand what that means, because he was Jesus Christ is not Christian. So we can't say that till the time the Homo sapien name was invented by some Westerner, human beings did not exist. So these names and tags were probably came in the course of our journey, but nonetheless, they belong to the same faith, which today is called Hinduism, and so they can be nothing but Hindus. What else will we call them? We can't call the Cholas Muslim or Christian or anything else. So, considering that they built temples, Hindu temples as we call them today, they worship these deities which are revered by Hindus today. They are obviously Hindus. So, I really wish we'd not given so much of footage to Kamal Hassan, but thanks to him, I think the whole of India is now talking about the Cholas, which our NCRT books hid away from us by not giving us much details about the Cholas. So now everybody on every news channel is talking at least for a couple of days on the Cholas, and that's a good thing, especially after that movie, made the rounds, and everyone is again talking about the glory of the Cholas.
Yeah, it's very important. And you raised this very interesting point. So maybe we can dwell a little bit on this about who is a Hindu. That's a very interesting bit. Your previous work was Savarkar, who quintessentially tried to define who is a Hindu in his own way. People can disagree with him, but he was the first man, to be very honest, on a very serious level, who gave it a thought and tried to work कि मैं ये identity कैसे करूं. You know, that point that was raised, you actually have raised, like the word Hindu was not in usage by uh, for example, हम लोग ने बाद में इसको संस्कृतम बोलना शुरू किया. अर्ली वर्क्स में तो भाषा बोलते थे ना सिर्फ. इट वाज लिटरली जस्ट कॉल्ड भाषा. सो अभी क्या वो संस्कृत नहीं बोलूं क्या मैं उसको अभी. सी कैटेगराइजेशन इज अ वेरी नेचुरल प्रोसेस दैट ह्यूमन बीइंग्स evolve to categorize as and when new memes come up. And to say that the way we look at ourselves as people today, where we use Hinduism as the larger rubric under which all of us are there, right? You, I,
Yeah,
and many others are there. Because we look at it today like that, that doesn't mean they were. I mean, that's a. Then क्या आदि शंकर भी हिंदू नहीं थे? Well, अभी एक तरफ वो लोग बोलते हैं आदि शंकर से हिंदुइज्म शुरू हुआ. If you see this crazy cuckoo scholarship of some people in the far left, they say आदि शंकर से हिंदू शुरू हुआ. हिंदू से, मगर आदि शंकर also never called himself a Hindu. तो क्या वो भी हिंदू नहीं हुए? I mean, I have never understood this logic that these people present, that because someone did not use the word Hindu, and good you pointed out, it's not like the Christ called himself Christian. He never did that.
yeah,
The Christ must have thought he was a Jew or something. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, so, so,
Even
so who
Prophet
knows?
Muhammad didn't know he
Yeah,
was a Muslim, so it only comes
exactly.
after. So, I mean, the same thing happened. I think even in Karnataka, where we're now talking a lot about this new movie, right, Kantara, which is about the coastal Karnataka, the Tulunadu, the traditions there, and the Daivaradhane, the Bhutaradhane that is done there of spirits. Now there is some people here who also say that this is also not Hindu. So the larger allusion, and that's a huge controversy, lot of valuable time spent on hair splitting that, saying ye bhi wo nahi hai, ye nahi hai. So and these are Adivasi, Mool Nivasi kind of traditions, and Hinduism is like this giant which is coming and appropriating, eating up and gobbling all these traditions. So there, Kushal, I think the larger narrative is, according to these people, Hinduism only stands for the Vedic and what they would like to call as the Brahminical stream of Hinduism. But that is historically untrue, because in the larger, Sanatan Dharma embrace, everyone from who followed animism to shamanic, rituals, to the, the chaste Vedic rituals according to all our, Vedic traditions and samhitas. Uh, that person was also part of the fold, the panthas. Then the Shakta and the Tantric thing, where the Panchamakaras, you had Mamsa, Madira, Maithunya, all of those part of that, which was completely different from what the Vedic tradition stood for. That was Devi, and so that's also part of the Sanatan Dharma. And you had all these, and Charvak and the whole, atheist school, that was also the Nirishwarvadi was also part of Hinduism. So today, I think the idea is to isolate and to say only these Vedic rituals, and thereby that there you can play all these games, right? Where you say Brahminical
Exactly.
patriarchy and caste and this and that, and first of all, dismantle this entire piece of what is Hinduism to one narrow sub segment, and that sub segment you attack constantly, saying this is Brahminical, this has caste, this has inequality, this was misogynist, this was anti-woman, anti-lower caste, all that, and it was in a language which we now reject, which is Sanskrit. So then the whole thing is just busted, dismantling global Hindutva, which is Hinduism, for the idiots who organize that. So it can be dismantled this way, by discrediting, stripping off piece by piece, come to one part and say this is also busted. So now there is nothing called Hinduism. It's all bogus. It's just a group of some priests who sat and exploited others for thousands and thousands of years. So I think that is the larger, game plan. Because considering this bhuta and this, getting all these, what is that called, invoking the spirits of either gods, deities, or ancestors, or kings and queens and all that of the past. In the book I write about Abbakka of Ullad, again from coastal Karnataka, and there, as part of the Bhuta Aradhane and the Yakshagana forms there, Abbakka is a common feature in several of those performances. So, including in, in my city, Bangalore, every year one of the biggest festivals that happens is this thing called Karaga, where the person who's the main performer, kind of a dance like what you saw in Kantara, the person who leads that actually invokes on himself Draupadi. So Draupadi comes on him, and then there is a Pandava, there is a Dharmaraja temple dedicated to Yudhishthir and all the other Pandavas, and this procession then with a huge, a crown of flowers and all that. This Draupadi thing, the person who invokes Draupadi goes around in a procession, and there's lots of rituals associated with that, very similar to what the Bhuta rituals are. So tomorrow someone is going to say even Draupadi and the Pandavas are not Hindu, and so I can't understand where this will stop. But I think for all of us to think about what the strategy is, it is exactly this: how to break this larger thing into small fragments and segments, and then discredit each of that, appropriate all the other things. So animism, shamanic rituals, tantra, and all these things, you can take over, like what happened with that Kali poster, and saying Kali, is our, she stands for Dalit rights, LGBT rights, all kinds of things. So that means she's not part of the Hindu fold. So similarly, each part you then take away, and then eventually the game plan is to discredit, delegitimize, dehumanize, and completely dismantle thereby one of the oldest and the most peaceful faiths of the world.
Exactly. And not only that, I think many writers, speakers, authors have said this. I think the best modern way to describe what Hinduism is like it's an operating platform. And on that platform, multiple softwares and applications are there, and we all use it in our own way as we use the same operating platform. I mean, if people were not Hindu, like, I'm taking this excerpt literally from the book. I want to read this excerpt. It moved me so much. this particular is, this is in the chapter of Rani Naiki Devi of Gujarat. In this, you have written to avenge the destruction of their sacred shrine. Some Hindus even posed as guides to lead Mahmud's armies astray in the arid desert of Kutch before they somehow managed their way back to Ghazni. As Minhaz-e Siraz mentions, on his demand for guides, a Hindu came forward and promised to lead the way. When the army of Islam had for some time, 3 days in brackets, marched behind him, and it became time to call a halt, people went in search of water, but it was nowhere found. The Sultan summoned the guide to his presence and asked him where water was procurable. He replied, quote, I have devoted my life for the sake of my deity Somnath, and have brought thee and thy army into this desert, where no water is in order, that all may perish. The Sultan ordered the guide to be killed. Who were these people if they were not Hindu? What
Yeah,
were these people? I mean, I don't get it.
exactly. And like just before that, Kushal, like I mentioned, those 50,000 people who are guarding the temple,
Yeah.
they were not even the king's soldiers. They were common people who were, and that was one reason, this embraciveness, this diversity, and that we were not governed by one book. One, a lot of time we rue the fact that, unlike the Abrahamic faiths, we are not guided by one, by unitariness in anything, but through the journey of our history, if one sees, and even in through lives of people like the ones I've covered in this book, it becomes very clear that that was the blessing in disguise which kept us alive as a civilization. Because there were so many opinions, there were so many traditions. What all could the invader destroy? You destroy one thing, 100 other things spring up. You destroy libraries, as they did Nalanda, Takshashila, Vikramshila, all these universities and libraries. You burn for 6 months, the library burns, all the manuscripts are gone. Any other country, the entire knowledge system would have been wiped out. But even today, if we have things like Ayurveda, Jyotisha, astronomy, all these things are still there. All of our traditions were oral traditions. So how many people are you going to kill to ensure that the oral traditions are also destroyed? You try to destroy the temples, as Professor Meenakshi Jain in her book on Flight of Hindu Deities mentions. Even tangible things like deities were protected. It's not that we just allowed chalo ajao and then they break our temples. They would have broken the outer edifice, but the deity itself kept flying in between territories, started getting submerged, buried in land, ocean, everywhere else, to be resurrected later. The tangible things itself were protected, but the intangibles, of our knowledge systems, of our traditions, our culture, the very fact that they flowed along, and there were so many versions of it. Other countries that within 50, 60 years capitulated to the might of the Islamic conquest, was because either the people there had already been disillusioned with the faiths that they were following, or there was just one thing to destroy, which you just destroy one empire, the Roman Empire, you do something else, and then that whole thing just erases. Whereas here, like Rakta Bija, you have multiple things mushrooming all the time. What all can you destroy? And that is one reason our diversity has also kept us alive through the march of history.
To use tech language in a very interesting way, like monotheism is like modern day giant social media platforms. Ironically, we are using one of that right now. Hinduism is like crypto, decentralized. Everybody has digital property rights, to use Balaji Srinivasan's language. A very interesting concept Balaji came up with for some other day. But the Hinduism actually sounds fundamentally a lot like crypto. Everybody is decentralized, but something ties them, and that thing that ties them is dharma. What
Yes.
ties all of us is dharma. And when you are, when a monotheist will ask this question, what is dharma, then we'll have to spend so much time to explain what dharma is to them. I have come to terms with this reality in my life personally, that I don't owe a monotheist an explanation. If you don't get it, it's your problem. It's not our problem now. And I say this with all comfort. Nothing personal against monotheists. I am not a monotheist. I don't need to explain it to them. If they want to come and understand us, they come on our terms now. I've actually been I'm mentally fed up of explaining our way to people. Mentally fed up. It's come to that extent. But we go back to the book. This incident actually, you know, Rani Rudramadevi of Warangal.
Hmm.
So her ascent, so it was not easy, right? A
Yes.
lot of like in the book you write, the ascent of a woman to the throne was detested by several male members of the family and the nobility, who became a constant thorn in Rudrama's flesh all through her reign. The 18th century work Pratapa Charitra of Ekam Branatha talks about of her stepbrothers Harihara Deva and Murari Deva constantly creating obstacles for her. Rudrama defeated them with the help of her loyal Nayakas, Gonagra, Gonaganna Reddy and Recherla Prasiditya, whom she had cultivated. Now, this is fascinating that, I mean, why these? And I'm so happy that you have shared so many female characters and personalities in this book. I'm actually particularly proud is because it shows a how hard it was for these women, and how society dealt a a body blow to them in one way, but they did not take it lying down. They gave it back with interest, and then they won in the end. So, can you talk a little bit about this story?
Yeah, Rudrama, and also, I mean, several of the women, Kushal. I mean, one common thread that I was quite fascinated to see. We spoke of Ahilya Bai, and that was the 18th century, and here was her father-in-law who was, letting her, educating her, who was allowing her to be a part of the administration, who was teaching her military strategy. You go back several centuries back, 400 years ago. Before that, you had the Kakatiya dynasty in the 13th century, where Ganpati Deva, who was a Kakatiya king, since he had no sons, he had Rudrama as one of the daughters, and since he found her to be talented or whatever at an early age, he gave her complete military training, and she was groomed to be a military warrior and a successor. And she always, she dressed in the masculine. She always, appeared like a man, and even her gender was concealed from the rest of the society till the time she came of age, and it could be no longer possible to hide that fact of nature. So till then, this was the trick that was being played to ensure that all the people who were out to usurp the kingdom, they were not going to do that. Same with Nike Devi. Go back another 200 years, in the 11th century. Here was a Goa Kadamba princess, the daughter of Paramardin, who again was trained in military pursuits. So daughters probably were given as much importance in terms of, being able successors, unlike the common narrative that we have, that, in India there's always been a differential treatment between sons and daughters. Of course, the disparities in the larger population is there, but in the ruling classes at least, a lot of these women had this common thread, that their fathers and fathers-in-law also actually allowed them to be a part of this, the administration of the state itself. And same continues all the way up to the 18th century. After Ahilya Bai, even Velu Nachiyar from Tamil Nadu, whose father, who was the king of the chieftain of Ramnathpuram or Ramnad, he also taught her everything, fencing, sword fighting, and everything. And these became such brave women as a result of this. So this was also a common, thread, especially in the lives of the women who came up in this. Chand Bibi of Ahmednagar, similarly, in the 16th century, again somebody who was allowed to be a part of conquest by her father. So I think this is a very interesting trend that accidentally came out while, plotting out these people's lives.
And the fascinating bit is that the historical records talk about their struggles also. It's not like they're trying to hide it or anything. I mean, otherwise how would you have also known in your researches? Because the historical records are quite clear about it. So before I start taking all the viewers questions, Vikram, one last question maybe, and then I'll start with all the other audience questions, is that what was the one, if I was to ask you your everlasting memory while you wrote this book, like what stood out for you, like what was special for you in this process?
Well, the Kushal, I think as I've constantly mentioned several times, that we've always been made to feel as an inferior race, that we have always covered in front of outsiders. We've been invaded, of course we were defeated, and that happens in the cycle of any country or civilization. But the fact that there were these success stories in different parts. There were pockets of India which remained virgin territory, unoccupied by anybody who came from anywhere. The fact that these became the citadels of emergence or resurgence of civilizational glory, whether it was northeast, parts of southern India, parts of western India. Incidentally, all those places which get ignored in our historical narrative were the ones which actually maintained that fight, and also succeeded in it. I think that was something that was very illuminative for me. We knew of it somewhere, but then to actually look at it the way it panned out, I think that was a huge something that would stay on with me as to, and this probably needs much more detailed digging beyond just these 15 people or whatever. If one actually maps out the history of India itself with special emphasis on this aspect, I think a very, very different narrative to what we call as a history of India itself might emerge.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, the feeling that had after finishing the book was that the story of India is the story of Hindu resistance. Now, we can talk about how good or bad or effective the resistance was in certain pockets, like in clearly with the change in technology and warfare, which is something that, your friend and mine, Abhijit Iyer, he has always spoken that the problem with India was, I think, beyond a point. Technology mein hum log thode piche ho gaye in terms of arms and ammunition, and and even military strategic formations and how we fight the enemy, which is obviously not the topic of today. But the point is that when we look at the spirit of India, many questions should arise from this, that why did these guys keep on fighting? What was the one thing that tied them or made them fight? And what were the reasons? Like, you read Tripur's work and you clearly see, at times there were individual kingdoms in India that sided with the British also, or with the Mughals also. But what were the reasons there? Were the reasons religious? Can anybody prove any religious connection, or these were purely administrative decisions? Like in the case of the Rajput Maratha conflicts, the Marathas, they started taxing, and the Rajputs did not like it, and the Rajputs were like, "यार ये तो बहुत ज़्यादा tax लगा रहा है, मैं उधर जा रहा हूँ," kind of a thing. These were very real political, real politic affected decisions, and these need to be had an open discussion of. Obviously social media पे ये कुछ नहीं हो सकता, क्योंकि that is a shit show. But maybe, future scholars need to look at this side of India. And unfortunately, as you rightly said, Indian scholarship is today has had such a stranglehold of the left, that even truth seeking is kind of taboo now. And I mean, I want to know why certain kings lost. Were they strategically that bad? I mean, why can't I ask this question? And it has to be beyond because they were Hindu. I mean, that's a stupid answer which these people want us to believe. So maybe, maybe we'll find out. But now I'll start asking you questions. So let's go to the audience question. सबसे पहला क्वेश्चन है, विक्रम सर, टीपू सुल्तान जी की बायोग्राफी कब आएगी?
अरे इन द वर्क्स, होपफुली एक डेढ़ साल में आ जाएगी, बिकॉज आई थिंक वहां पे आई वांट टू बी डबली ट्रिपली श्योर, बिकॉज all the facts, all the documents, all the references, the bibliography needs to be in order. अगर my head remains should remain where it is. So because of the because of the importance that this man has been made into, so it would take time rather than do something in haste and regret in leisure. I think it's better to do a foolproof job and then set it out. So maybe a year and a half, I hope, or earlier than that, to bring that out.
Well, knowing you will take a year and a half because you're a typical nerd who goes through everything. So I know it's going to take that much time. S- So, Acha, this is from. So this is saying this question is coming from a Hindustani musician who loved your work.
Oh, wow.
Vikramji, are any other musician that you find interesting to research after Gohar Jan and S. Balachandar?
Well, thank you for that question. That's again a parallel interest which all the time lives. We've come out with Grammy Award winning musician Ricky Cage and I. We brought out another book earlier this year. No, it was last year, towards the end of last year, called Women of the Records. So, where, interestingly, when recording technology came to India in 1902, all over India, north, south, east, west, it was interestingly women who adapted to this technology. The men folk just stayed away from it. They boycotted this, and all kinds of superstitions did the rounds that if you record your voice, then the gods will be displeased, and you will lose your singing voice and all that. But these women who largely belong to the Tawayaf and the Devdasi communities of India, they were the ones who took the lead. So this book, Women of the Record, which talks about these people. Gohar Jan was, of course, the pioneering lady in that, but there were several others: Janki Bai of Allahabad, Zohra Bai Agrewali, Malka Jan of Agra, Bai Sundra Bai of Pune, Achan Bai of Bombay, Bangalore Nagaratnamma, Coimbatore Tai, Salem Godavari, Noti Binodini from Calcutta, Dhanakoti Ammal of Kanchipuram, Coimbatore Tai. All these, fascinating women, again, whose stories, whose names also have been obliterated even in mainstream classical music today. So this book, chronicles little bits and pieces of their life, fragments that we could put together, and also comes with a CD. As some of your viewers may know, Kushal, I've also established this archive of Indian music,
Yeah.
which is probably India's first digital sound archive, online digital sound archive for vintage gramophone records going back to 1902, which we rescue from chor bazaars and raddi shops and actually digitize that. And people can hear these free of cost on SoundCloud. On SoundCloud, if you type Archive of Indian Music, about 3,000 tracks are there for you to hear. But real high-end digital transfers we got done, Ricky Cage and I, with the help of another Grammy Award winning sound engineer in the US called Michael Graves. So the book comes with a CD of all these voices going back to
Wow.
1902, including the first ever recording that MS Subbulakshmi did as a
Wow.
nine-year-old, kid in 1926, 25, 26. So that too, that was a record that I had rescued from a chor bazaar in Moor Market in Chennai. And so so this book may be of interest to those who have gender studies and music and all of this as an area of interest to pick up and read.
Again, did Vikram weigh emic versus etic accounts of the personalities differently? Often there's a thin line between fact and legend when it comes to great people. How do we separate them when there's scarce material? I think this is more like I guess, a technical question.
Yeah, so like the example I gave, including of Lalitaditya. So the fanciful, the record, the actual record, though Kalhana wrote the Rajatarangini on the history of Kashmir rulers in the 13th century, several decades after, I mean, centuries after even the Karkotas had disappeared. But there's so much of hyperbole, maybe to ingratiate himself to the existing ruler of Kashmir, then to say ours was the greatest kingdom. But a modern scholar needs to sift through that hyperbole and actually see which of it is actually true. Is there a counter narrative? Are there, if the Kalhana is saying that Lalitaditya conquered Sri Lanka or Karnataka and Tamil Nadu and all that, are there counter evidences in those places to show what Kalhana is writing is indeed true? So this triangulation, cross verification of facts, I think is important, even when it comes to the early periods or the middle ages or whatever that we're talking about.
Fair enough. The next question is: are there any Indian inscriptions or writings documenting beliefs of pre 691 AD Arabs who attempted conquests in India? There is a strong hypothesis that Islam as a religion wasn't formed until 691 AD.
Not too sure of. I don't think there is any, as far as I know. Maybe there's some other scholar who might have worked specifically on that time or era or that subject to shed more light on that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. So the next question is Vikram sir. How significant is Adi Shankara and how significant are his contributions in uniting and creating a common religio-cultural entity that we now call Bharat? I mean, have you studied the life and journey of Adi Shankara in that sense, Vikram?
Well, not entirely Kushal, but of course, even I make a mention of him even in this book,
Hmm.
where interestingly, all these rulers, Lalitaditya, Rajendra Chola, Rajaraja Chola, they all went on Digvijaya campaigns. Uh, Go on with that, right from the early times when you had this Ashwamedha and all that, you leave the horse, and where all that horse goes, that becomes your land, and anyone opposes you, you capture, you defeat that person in conquest and take over that land. So Digvijaya campaigns, even of Lalita Aditya and all these people were there. But interestingly, in India, Digvijaya was not only political conquest. Adi Shankara also went on a Digvijaya. He was not a political ruler of any sorts. From a small little, town in the southernmost part of India in Kerala, he could have just been there, written whatever he wrote there, become a sannyasi sadhu, which he became, composed all his magnificent works that he did in such a short span of his life, and passed on. But he didn't do that. He went on a Digvijaya, and that was the common trend. That Digvijaya, when the Indic mind thought of conquest, it was not just political conquest, but also intellectually. Can you debate with people with an opposite viewpoint and bring them over to your thought process? So that famous debate between him and Mandan Mishra, where the two of them have this Vaad Vivad for several days, months, and so on, where Adi Shankara also has to then do leave his body and occupy the body of a king, and so to as to experience the grihastha that he never did. All of this, the Digvijaya was very much a part of spreading your intellectual might also in the country, which he did. So that's how the Advaita philosophy spread throughout the length and breadth of Bharatvarsh. And most importantly, and there was no need for him to establish his the mutts in the four cardinal directions of this landmass. People say India never existed, there's nothing called India and all of that. So he could have just remained maybe in South India, if this whole Dravidian thing, that South was what was more important and all of that that we say. Here was a man who came from the South. He could have just restricted himself to the southern part of India, but he didn't do that. The southern thing also was not in his so-called home state of in Kerala, which of course was not so called, but in Sringeri in Karnataka today. And then he goes to east, west, whether it's Dwarka, Puri, and then Badrinath in the north. So the four things that he established there, and the final Sarvagnya Peeth that he established in Kashmir, which was the epicenter of our Indic knowledge, Indic faith, our systems of learning. All of that was there, and the presiding deity was Sharda, goddess Sharda, and the script that they had was also Sharda. So Kashmir's importance in the Indic imagination was so immense that that is why he went and established it there, the Sharda Peeth. And in doing this, this common sphere of cultural circulation that he created across this entire landmass, that gave the geography of what India was, to all those who say India was created only by the British, or the Mughals and all these things. what was this activity of a common man? He was not a ruler. The rulers may have done what they did, but a common person who was a philosopher, who was a scholar, he created this thread of circulation which united all of us. And all our pilgrimages, Kushal, if we see uh, the 51 Shakti Pithas, why are they scattered across the length and breadth of India? Why are all the Jyotirlingas, the 12 Jyotirlingas, everything could be in one place? If Shiva was in Kailash, in and around that, you could have had all of them, but they are also scattered across the length and breadth. The seven Puris, which are, Kashi, Ayodhya, Mathura, Kanchi, Haridwar, all of these, Dwarka, Badrinath, they also are scattered across north, south, east, west, and as told in the Garud Puran. Similarly, so all these places, the scattering of our sacred spaces to make this entire land, sacred, was also, I think, a very interesting concept of our ancestors. To prevent any kind of parochialism. If I felt, that my part of the country is great, there were 100 others which were as great or greater. So, if I was a Devi Upasak and I thought, Kamakhya is the place, there was something else where Sati's eyes fell, Sati's nose ring fell, something else somewhere else fell where, everything was as important as where the yoni fell. So, I think this way, and then our rivers being sacred, our forests, our mountains. So, it was a great effort to combine faith with environmental consciousness, with also a sense of patriotism and sacred geography that came about, and culturally unify us as a civilization. And so political boundaries can keep changing all the time. What India was in pre 1947, it is not what it is now. And so those things in the history of every nation, that keeps changing dynamically, but the essence, the ethos, I think that remains the same. And that is what I think our ancestors had a very, very clear vision of when they conceptualized this. And Shankaracharya was one of them who did this successfully by uniting all of them. And a queen also did that, like an Ahilya Bai Holkar, who also understood what were the important civilizational markers, what all should I renovate, what all should I reconstruct. She had a very clear thought and vision as to what she had to do. And I think that is how all these places were tied together into one common thread of faith, civilization, culture, whatever you may call it.
Exactly. And that is where it's funny. A viewer has made a comment that if the Cholas were not Hindu, then Mahatma Gandhi was not a Congressee because he doesn't hold Congress party membership. I mean, I mean, what do we say to that? But yeah, just to add to that, this is what people need to realize when categorizations and understanding different cultures. I thought, the whole prospect or the whole project about understanding each other was steel manning, not straw
Hmm.
manning the other side. And what has unfortunately happened, look at the word games that are played, Vikram, and maybe this could be our passing comment, and then we can wrap up today's discussion because we're already an hour and 15 minutes in. But the word, anytime, sometimes anything bad has to be shown in the past, then Hinduism becomes an ancient religion.
Hmm.
Otherwise, Hinduism is a modern creation which was started nascently at the time of Adi Shankara, and then literally the new Hinduism hypothesis that starts with Swami Vivekananda and all these other people who start neo Hinduism. So it depends on what it suits them. Yoga is not Hindu, ठीक है, क्योंकि दैट इज टू गुड टू बी हिंदू। अरे ऐसे थोड़ा ना होता है, हिंदू में कुछ अच्छा हो ही नहीं सकता। देन मेडिटेशन इज नॉट हिंदू, वो तो बुद्धिस्ट ने दिया था, हिंदू तो कुछ कर नहीं रहे थे। अच्छा, कास्ट इज यूनिकली हिंदू। अगर अभी अभी मेरे जैसा आदमी मैं उठा के बुद्धिस्ट स्क्रिप्चर्स पढ़ना शुरू कर दूंगा तो लोगों को मिर्चें लग जाएंगी कि क्या हो रहा था। लाइक टू बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट, एंड दीज आर नॉट योर वर्ड्स, दीज आर माय वर्ड्स, is there any categorical anti-caste movement in India? There's only one, the Bhakti movement, nothing else. I'm being very, very categorical here in my view. If you want to talk about anti-casteism, no, the British were not anti-caste. It was we who fought against all these things. It was our reformers who fought against all these things. And it starts all the way from the Bhakti movement, which was its own unique way of dealing with our own societal problems. When we found discrimination, we did not say, I am leaving, screw religion, dump everything, we will start our own thing. That was our way and our own unique way of doing things. And unfortunately, in this entire debate in India, somewhere deep down, I don't know if any society has had so many bad scholars in one place as India has managed to do, and I don't know what to do about it. And people like you, Vikram, and I say this not, uh, I'll say this behind the back also, and this is why I cherish people like you, because at least कोई तो है जो सच की तरफ लेके जा रहा है हमको. And it doesn't matter if the truth sometimes shows us in a bad light. It's not like, in your book you clearly show the struggles these women went through when they took the throne, and the problems they had to face. um, you did not shy away from stating stories like there were 10 queens, 9 तो सती हो गई ना. आई मीन ये 9 तो हुई ना, वो एक के बारे में वो रोक रहे थे उनको, वो 9 को नहीं रोक रहे थे. मगर द पॉइंट इज दैट you did not shy away from sharing the facts. And for me, before we wrap today's discussion up, once again, on behalf of everyone, man, thanks for what you do, seriously. I don't know how people are going to be informed in this day and age of so much misinformation from all sides. But you are a silver lining in this entire shit show of information. So once again, man, thanks for what you do, and keep doing this.
Thank you, Kushal. Despite all the court cases, the allegations, the the shitstorm that happens, I think that gives a lot more power. That you know, the other side, if we can call that one, if when they attack you. That shows that your work is at some point making them nervous or actually shaking their foundations of lies, because that side is very much known to ignore people whom they consider unimportant, and they do it, the royal ignoring that they do, like it's happened in the past, they do that quite a lot. So the more someone goes behind you and tries to discredit you, I think somewhere it gives you a little bit of satisfaction, though it's a lot of stress to take otherwise, but there is some satisfaction that maybe in small ways you're probably pushing the needle ahead. And of course there'll be, it's a bigger movement where lots more people need to, I think, join if we actually have to move ahead significantly.
Yeah, man. And we move ahead significantly not only by reading. And this is my message to every single viewer. I tend to do a lot of big book reviews is because I want to cultivate a culture of reading. And when I say reading, not just read Vikram's books, read variety of books, challenge yourself mentally. Like, to me, I read Savarkar's biography. I forgot the name of the communist author who had a Marxist who had written Savarkar's biography. That is one of the famous ones. And then Dhananjay Keer was there. And then I read Vikram's one. I have read all three, for the record. And again, this is not because Vikram is my friend or something. I think Vikram's is the best because Vikram just said what Savarkar said. The other biographies were like, बट आई थिंक दिस इज हैपनिंग. अरे मुझे नहीं लेना देना है कि आप क्या सोच रहे हो, मुझे ये जानना है कि सावरकर क्या सोच रहा है. एंड दिस इज व्हाई आई एंजॉयड विक्रम्स वर्क, बिकॉज विक्रम वाज जस्ट स्टेटिंग इट. Again, in this book, it is the same thing. All this book is, it takes excerpts and characters from Indian history. 15, now you can say ये क्यों नहीं, अरे भाई 15 सिलेक्ट करने थे तो किए हैं, अभी ये 15 को तो पढ़ लो ना. अगर आपको और जानने हैं तो और कोई आप लिख लेना. मगर द पॉइंट इज, learn how Vikram writes, read his study his style, check how he presents the bibliography, see how precise it is. You can learn many things, and you should support good work, which is why I say buy books, especially Vikram's books. If you have not bought Savarkar's, not just this one, the Savarkar ones, you're missing out on something. That book freaking blew my mind. I have quoted Vikram's book at least 20 times on my podcast, in random podcasts where I just pull up the book and I just read, "Are Savarkar ne ye bola tha," kind of a thing. That's how useful it has been for me. So once again, guys, please buy this book. In the description of the podcast, you'll see the link to buy the book. Follow Vikram. And also, I did not know about this musical thing. the the CD. So I would recommend everyone to go and check that out. Also, I also did not know this. The first thing I'm going to go is go to SoundCloud and check out the archive of music too. But Vikram, once again, buddy, thanks a lot for coming, and I can't wait to talk to you again on the podcast, and looking forward to reading your next book too.
Thank you so much, Kushal. I think among all the interviews that I've always done, and lest this begins to sound like some mutual admiration club, I must mention this in all honesty that I don't think any interviewer, any reviewer actually reads the book. It's just the prologue that most people read, and then some fanciful questions. They see the contents, make some questions which are but obvious. Anyone with little common sense can create questions, but you actually go into every chapter, you note down things, you actually ask the right questions, and that's a delight for anybody to be interviewed by you. So it's always such a pleasure to be on your podcast, because you also challenge me so many times by asking me questions which I might not have actually thought of, even while writing it may have skipped my mind. So thank you too for what you do, and I think everyone should support his podcast too, as the link is coming at the bottom of the the screen. So I hope you have many more shows and many more interesting guests whom you can bring and enlighten all of us with what you do.
Thanks, man. Thanks, sir. All right, guys, we'll wrap today's discussion up. Once again, buy the book, follow Vikram on Twitter. If you like what I'm doing over here, subscribe to the Cārvāka Podcast YouTube channel, like this video, leave a comment over there, or become a member on YouTube, Patreon, or buy the merch, or send your donations through UPI. I will see you guys again with another podcast. Until then, namaste. Take care. Bye bye.